This video is brought to you by Incogni. The UK has just held what could well be one of the weirdest by-elections in modern history, with the residents of Rochdale electing George Galloway as their new MP. Now, what was so strange about this is that the by-election took place amid a backdrop of scandal and controversy among most of the candidates standing for election, three of whom were either former Labour MPs or Labour candidates. So in this video, we're going to have a look into the background of the by-election, who won, and what implications this has for the main parties in the run-up to the general election. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. The by-election was scheduled following the death of longtime Labour MP Sir Tony Lloyd. Considering that this was a by-election in a fairly safe Labour seat held following the death of a Labour MP, you'd assume that Labour stood a fairly good chance of winning the seat. And well, they definitely did. But this all went awry due to comments made by the Labour candidate for the seat, Azhar Ali. Ali was selected as the Labour candidate at the end of January. He seemed like a safe pair of hands, being the leader of the Labour group on the Lancashire County Council. However, during the course of the campaign, controversial comments made by Ali were published by the Daily Mail. Ali claimed that Israel had allowed the October the 7th attacks to go ahead in order to justify military action in Gaza. Labour withdrew their support the very next day, meaning that they no longer endorsed him as a Labour candidate. However, unfortunately for the Labour leadership, the ballot papers had already been printed, meaning that Ali would still be listed as a Labour candidate on voting day. Now, this put Labour in an awkward position, as members of the party couldn't really endorse anyone in the Rochdale by-election. But Labour weren't the only party having an issue with their candidate, though. The Greens have also had to withdraw their support from the candidate after tweets from 2013 to 2015 demonstrated alleged Islamophobia. So, if voters in Rochdale didn't want to vote for someone accused of anti-Semitism or someone accused of Islamophobia, then who could they vote for? Well, there was Reform UK's candidate Simon Danczuk, a former Labour MP who sent explicit messages to a 17-year-old girl. While criminal charges were dropped, Labour didn't select him as their candidate for Rochdale in the 2017 election. There was also the Workers' Party candidate George Galloway, someone who has long voiced his support for the Palestinian cause and hoped to gain support from the Muslim population in the constituency. Galloway is controversial in his own right, though, having been sacked from talk radio previously for an anti-Semitic tweet following Liverpool's Champions League win. He also previously described Bradford as an Israel-free zone. Throughout this campaign too, he's attracted controversy. He defended the use of the phrase "from the river to the sea," a phrase that some see as anti-Semitic, and has historically described Israel as an apartheid state. Some people also noticed that Galloway was using different campaign literature for different households. One letter written to non-Muslim households explains that Galloway has no difficulty in describing what a woman is, that he believes in law and order, and that he will make Rochdale great again. The other, written to Muslim households, explains that he will fight for Muslims and has done his whole life. This appears to be a populist campaigning strategy, and some have already questioned the ethics of this kind of micro-targeting. Anyway, outside of these candidates, voters in Rochdale also had the option to vote for a relatively uncontroversial Conservative candidate, Paul Ellison, a former Rochdale Man of the Year, who did, though, take a holiday during the campaign, the Liberal Democrat candidate, Ian Donaldson, a former councillor, the monster raving Looney Party candidate, Raving Rodent Subordinate, or a handful of independent candidates. And, well, in what would have seemed inconceivable only a couple of weeks ago, it seems that the voters of Rochdale have opted to elect George Galloway as their MP, with a majority of 6,638 votes. Galloway received 39.7% of the vote, with independent candidate David Tully in an impressive second place on 21.3%, Conservative Paul Ellison in third with 12%, and the former Labour candidate Azhar Ali in fourth with 7%. Now, there are three reasons for Galloway's success. First, as we explained earlier, Labour opted to withdraw their support for their candidate, effectively creating a vacuum. Second, the salience of the Israel-Gaza war as an issue at the moment worked in Galloway's favour. With the war continuing to rage, the issue seems to be dominating politics in the UK. It's also caused controversy for the main parties, with the Lee Anderson scandal tearing the Tories apart, and a recent Gaza ceasefire vote undermining both the Labour Party and the Speaker. The fact that Galloway doesn't have a National Party label, with all the baggage that this brings on issues like Gaza and Israel, likely helped. And what helped even further is that he's been a vocal supporter of Gaza throughout his political career. This brings us on to the third reason that Galloway won: the large Muslim population in Rochdale. In the 2021 census, 18.8% of residents reported themselves as Muslim, an increase from the 13.9% reported back in 2011. This is significantly higher than the 6.7% of residents in England reporting to be Muslim. Clearly, having been a supporter of the Palestinian cause his whole life helped him out here. So, what does this mean for the other parties? Well, it's important not to overstate the situation for Labour. Sure, this was the largest drop in support for them in a post-war by-election. However, this was a unique election in which they effectively didn't campaign after withdrawing their endorsement of their candidate. While embarrassing, this is unlikely to be a problem for them in the general election. As polling guru Professor Sir John Curtis explained yesterday morning, it's unlikely that anyone else has the ability to use this issue, to exploit this issue, the war in Gaza, in the way that Mr. Galloway is uniquely able to. However, while Galloway is unlikely to cause Labour any problems at the next election, it's fair to say that he's a very strong orator. It's likely that he's going to be a vocal critic of Starmer, especially when it comes to Gaza. For the Conservatives, though, this by-election is yet another demonstration of the problems they currently face. Their vote share was 19 points below what it was in 2019. And, well, the thing is, they don't have the excuse that they dropped support for their candidate. This was also a bad showing for Reform UK, who only achieved 6.3% of the vote. Considering they're currently polling at about 10% nationally, and there's been a lot of talk about how much of an impact they'll have on the Tories, this is a pretty disappointing result. Either way, this isn't a particularly good day for the Tories, Labour, or Reform UK. Galloway's victory may, at least, put some pressure on the parties to change their stance towards Israel and Gaza. Clearly, the current state of the world is plagued by uncertainty and risk, and while you've been watching this video, your personal information might have been sold or published online without you even knowing it. Even whilst recording videos, we're interrupted by robocalls, and if you're wondering why you also might be getting random numbers calling your phone, well, the answer is the malevolent workings of shady forces called data brokers. These data brokers can collect and sell your personal information to anyone, from a company to an online criminal. This data can include your name and aliases, social security number, login credentials, home address, location, history, online activity, and much more. But even if you're not fussed about a call here and there, one day it could be a little call, but the next a huge loan could be taken out under your name. So if you want to protect your data, Incogni is here to help. Incogni reaches out to data brokers on your behalf, requests your personal data removal, and deals with any objections from their side. Since many data brokers continue collecting your personal information even after they've removed it, Incogni also takes care that your data stays off the market by conducting repeated removal requests. So create an account with our link in the description, grant Incogni the ability to work on your behalf, and sit back as they make you safer. Plus, by using our link, you'll get an exclusive 60% off an annual Incogni plan. Thanks for checking it out, and thanks to Incogni for supporting this video.